All right, welcome to episode 14 of Locked in Leftist. Been at it a little while. I'm your host, Bubble, and I'm joined as always by El Diablo.
Hello, everyone. Me, El Diablo, and yeah, welcome back for another episode.
So, we have kind of a interesting episode. We're going to talk about protests, but we're also going to talk about a lot of the factors that we're protesting against. We're kind of in a rising tide of fascism or a declining environment of freedoms, however you want to look at it. But this was brought on by El Diablo. You were interested in a video I posted about a counter protest I went to a few months ago.
Yes, so that was it was in Texas. I think was it Texas State University or just specific university?
Uh, it was at University of North Texas.
Okay, University of North Texas. So there was in this video that I watched, there was I guess a group of protesters, and then there was a counter protesters with you, and other people, but they were sort of in the video I remember watching. They were talking about something called Christian fascism and how this specific person in the video was leading the youth to um, kind of become better in their eyes. And there were other videos as well that talked about, women's rights and how they wanted to return to sort of like a fundamentalist society. And it interested me because it scared me, obviously. That's scary. But it interested me because there's people are always saying, "Oh, what's happening in America with all these anti-abortion and anti-reproductive health rules and people being sentenced, like we talked about last time, people getting arrested, but it's like happening right in front of us. And it's not it's not there's I don't know if it's an issue of like people not seeing it, the media not really showing it, but there is this sentiment in our society that I think we talked about earlier, that there are people on the right and people on the left that are sort of opposing um, Western values, for lack of a better word, or just rejecting it because of neoliberalism and having discontent with things in general, like economic factors, and then they'll blame it on the fact that women are in the workforce or just a whole bunch of stuff. So that's why I feel like there has been a rise in these sentiments with groups of people in the right and then groups of people on the left for completely different reasons, and they're not advocating for that type of thing. They're just advocating for an anti-capitalist world on the left, which is what we want, or I want. But what I've noticed from on the far right spectrum, it's a very patriarchal, homogenous, white supremacist society that they are looking to implement. And a lot of the youth have become like super, I forgot the word I was going to say, I don't know what the word is, but they just don't they don't aren't we're not hopeful for the future. And unfortunately that does take people. People find groups that take them in, and they feel comfortable and they feel loved. And I think that's why a lot of the youth that are involved in that type of thing are going towards that sort of far right society that they're hoping for. Sorry, that was like a word salad.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I think neoliberalism has failed everyone in this world, except for the 1%, not just in our country but all over, and it's led to this backlash against kind of the neoliberal order that the West has forced on the world. Um, Specifically talking about the kids, I saw a tweet actually the other day that I think really explained it well. Um, it was that in 2020 there were so many um, white kids, white young people who were in the streets standing up for Black lives, and that combined with Donald Trump losing really scared the right wing. It made them realize or feel like they were losing control of the next generation. And so we've seen a massive push to like retake control of children, of young people through school boards, through trans youth bans, um, through critical race theory, hysteria, and all these different things. Um, and I think the right is coalesced around Christian fascism versus white identity politics. There's still a lot of white identity politics out there, and actually, Christian fascism is deeply tied into it, but it's more obscured, and it's I think more marketable in America today, because basically, they're similar in that, well, there's an in group, and like if you belong to the in group, we're gonna try to make your lives better. But it's more expansive than just white people if you turn it into a Christian identity thing, right? If you are Christian and that is your identity, then we're going to do a fascism that benefits you. Um, but yeah, I think a lot of people, particularly in liberal states, may not be seeing the rise of Christian fascism in the same way that we are in red states. Um, for us, it's just like an everyday fact of life. Um, there are at least a dozen active Christian fascist groups in my area, and they put up stickers and do banner drops, and they hold rallies. Sometimes they do joint events with Republican politicians. Um, and yeah, they've very much been pushing for uh, getting teachers fired, getting principals fired, banning critical race theory, banning books, burning books, um, uh, you know, banning social and medical transitions, uh, banning teachers from, uh, you know, exposing their children to any kind of LGBT existence. Really, they've been really big in this state and in Florida with like, well, if you're gay married, you can't talk about it, or we'll fire you. Like, you can't. Just kids aren't even allowed to know anything.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, it's been a scary time with this rising Christian fascism. Do you know? I guess like I've kind of been forced to learn about it. Do you Are you familiar with like what Christian fascism means in the current climate?
Okay, so I'm not sure the current climate, but like according to like Wikipedia, I actually have it down right here if I can read it. So this is
Yeah.
Wikipedia, guys. So people always tell you not to use it, but I'm going to read it from here. So it says Christian fascism denotes the intersection between fascism and Christianity, and it also encompasses the fascistic, totalitarian, and imperialistic aspects of the Christian Church. It is sometimes referred to as Christo-Fascism, a neologism coined by liberation theologist Dorothy Soule, I don't know how to say that, in 1970. So yeah, it just sounds like it's kind of in my when I read that, it sounds like obviously the like I guess kind of like Afghanistan, but that's what I see it as, where it's a very totalitarian state. It's based off theology, religion, and it follows the holy book in a very fundamentalist, maybe extremist way. And in the modern sense, I'm not sure if that would be the same thing, but I would think it's just a very strict type of way to live and very anti women's rights as well, and LGBTQ, and just very restrictive.
Yeah, it's definitely similar in that it's theocratic, so they want laws based on their interpretation of the Bible, um, and it's fascistic in that it incorporates kind of like that return to glory um, mindset. It's anti-democratic, which we clearly saw on January 6th, but I think a lot of people haven't come to terms with it yet that Americans are abandoning liberal democracy, um, which I don't think is entirely unwarranted. We've had a liberal democracy that's been controlled by a neoliberal elite, um, supporting corporate interests, supporting financialization of the economy, and all of these things that have hurt people. Um, but I think it's hard for people to swallow that the Republican Party largely, in its entirety, so right, one of the two parties, like 30-40% of the population, they're done with democracy. They're not doing this like elections and voting anymore. They're in this by by any means necessary, whatever it takes kind of mindset that they're going to get their way. They're going to put um, these Christian fascist laws into place. They're going to restrict and ban the people they don't like. They're going to institute measures to control them. Um, so that includes children, because it's kind of weird. Um, but like people on the far right have always hated children. You know, they've always they've always wanted to control them, like put them in jobs, like all of this stuff. So even if they're white Christian children, they've just always hated children.
I
Um,
yeah.
yeah. So children, women, people who are not Christian, people who are not white. And we talked a little bit about this before the show, but Christian fascism is a pretty insidious backdoor to ethnic cleansing, to genocide, because while it kind of offers this false hope, like, well, if you're just Christian, then it's okay. You'll fit in our new Christian society that we want to build. It's actually not true because it's tied up with evangelical purity culture, which is itself tied up with white supremacy. So I was listening to an episode of It Could Happen Here, a podcast by the journalist Robert Evans. It was covering the Atlanta mass shooting, and they really covered it well and went into how this white evangelical man decided to do a mass shooting, trying to kill as many Asian women as he could because he associated them with sinfulness. They were violating the Christian purity of the community just by existing. Um, these were massage therapists. They were not even sex workers. Not that it would have been any less horrific had he murdered sex workers, but he murdered people that he perceived as sex workers because of their race. And that's very deeply tied into where this Christian fascism and this purity culture is going to, is in this obsession to protect the purity of the community. um, Naturally, non-white people become a target. They become a target um, because of a perceived sinfulness of non-white people for crime, for sex, for drugs, for not being Christian, all of these different things. So it's a backdoor to the same kind of genocide as uh, like white identity fascists threaten us with.
Yeah, that's I wanted to add on to that a little bit, but
Are you good?
hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, my bad. I don't know what happened. Okay. Um yeah, so there's this idea of like, yeah, like you think you'll be safe, but if you really break it down all the way down, that leads to like a very homogenous society, like we talked about before too. Because it's not just you being Christian. Like if let's say if it was, if you're Catholic and they wanted like a very Protestant type, like that would be an issue as well. There would always be some type of problem based on like identity or who you are or what you follow, what you believe, because they want a very specific world, like, in their interpretation of their faith. I don't want to talk bad about like people's religions because like I personally like I don't know a lot about Christianity personally, but I do know that like of course there are always interpretations of far right extremists. That always happens, and they often use the religion or like Christian fascism to meet their end goal of their own with their own prejudices. Like that's what has happened in history, and it will happen again if we don't stop it. But um, I wanted to bring that up because I feel like as a society, like we are moving against this neoliberal way, and I do agree. I think it's warranted. People class people everywhere have not got anything anywhere in decades. It's only helped the elite and the rich, and people on the right and on the left I think share this as in when they look at like celebrities and politicians, they do see people who overindulge and are living in this sort of fantasy world compared to the rest of the world, and they're like able to fly to on their private jets to a different private islands in the pandemic, and we're losing our jobs and our homes and our money. So I see that as a big stressor in people going in either direction. But I wanted to ask you, like, what can we, since we talk about self defense in these situations, it's like, what can we do? Because it seems like the Texas University was not going to say anything against those people, the Christian fascist people. They were like saying that they were exercising their free speech, I think, and I do like I support free speech, but like, come on, that's not like that's like advocating violence in my opinion, and it's like it seems like obviously our government is far right and people in charge are far right capitalists and they want money but what I'm saying is how do we as individuals on the left or in the LGBTQ on the left protect ourselves. We always tell people to get armed, but like what do you do in that situation where you feel like a lot of people will join that side because there are people of other religions as well that like will make alliances with those types of people because they also believe those far right values.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I don't. We talked about this before the show, but on Twitter during the pullout from Afghanistan, there was a lot of right wing conservative support for the Taliban. Um, so I fully foresee those kinds of alliances happening in the future. Um, as far as what we can do about it, unfortunately, I really think it just comes back to the same types of things we've always been talking about. Like you said, the administration of this university, one of the most liberal universities in the region, um, has been no help at all. And we just cannot rely on our institutions, on our political leadership to do anything. Um, Part of that is fear, fear of repercussions for themselves from the powerful and militant Christian fascist right. Part of it is the influence of money. The Christian fascist right has a lot of big donors. They have a lot of powerful people and big piles of money on their side that can easily target you. This is how fascism rises. Is people don't speak up because then they'll be the next target. It's a game of how do I move myself down on this target list. And that's how it's operated throughout history. Because I think it's important for people to remember that fascism is simply colonialism coming home. Um, this has operated all around the world for centuries. Uh, I'm going to convert to Christianity, so I become less of a target. Um, I'm going to align. I'm going to be a supporter of the colonial government, so that I'm less of a target. All of these different things. I'm going to become a police officer, so that I become less of a target. Um, but yeah, it's for those of us who can't change who we are. It's group up, it's get armed. Individually, we don't have political power, we don't have physical power, but as a group, we certainly do, and we can exert that influence in a number of ways. There was a woman named Melissa Lucio who was supposed to be executed in Texas um, just a couple days ago, but there was a mass letter writing call in campaign, um, very much led by leftist organizers as well as progressive organizers. Anyway, we got her sentence commuted, so she is not going to be executed now, and that's a victory. And we've had other victories. We just have to keep organizing and combining our power.
Mm.
But I wanted to jump back to something that we talked about a few minutes ago briefly because I had a powerful childhood memory that's very relevant when we talked about um, like being seen as Christian, and this kind of Christian identity politics. So growing up, my family was very hardcore Southern Baptist, like very conservative, evangelical, bigoted towards all of these different groups. Um, and yet, I remember distinctly many times as a kid growing up, my friends would never view me as Christian. They never thought I was Christian, right? So I would be at a sleepover or something, a party, and it would come up somehow. And not one or two of my friends, but all of my white friends, they would say, "Wait, you're Christian? I thought you were like Buddhist or atheist or something." I was like, "No. Why? What gave you that idea? I've never said that in my life." Um, and that's very instructive because at the end of the day, what you look like will determine whether you fit into this Christian fascist society that these people want to build. If you don't look white, you don't look Christian, and that will make you a target. Um, the people who know you, if you are Christian, you fit into that identity politics, they might stand up for you. They might say, like, no, they go to my church or whatever. But the people that don't know you, they will just look at your face and they will see a target.
Mm.
Um,
Yep.
but yeah, organizing has been going well. I think people across marginalized groups, they can feel the danger, they can feel the threat, um, which they should because the laws are being targeted against them as we speak. It's been an incredible couple years.
Yeah.
Uh, I hope that all people can feel it, but I suspect that people in certain demographics and in certain states, they don't feel it the same way we do down here. But everything has gotten much worse and much scarier since Biden was elected. The triumph of the Democratic Party has done nothing to protect us. Um, and that's why it makes it more important than ever to engage yourself in community defense, organizing, um, firearms and other self-defense training, and things like that.
Yeah. Definitely. The last, yeah, I would say it's gone really downhill since the pandemic started. Like, just it sort of gave it a more rapid change, downhill, for sure. And we've seen reactive groups form from that because it is a slap in the face to the American people, whether you voted for Trump or not. And like, for me, like, obviously didn't vote for either of them. I actually don't really even think we can vote our way out of this. In my opinion, I don't think we can. I think we need like firepower and organizing. Like you said, we need to work together. Um, and keep each other safe. But it's like, can't, like, with the vice president who had zero delegates and became vice president when nobody even supported, like, a very small population of people did like our VP, and our president. Like, people can see that obviously, this was a travesty. Like even though, like, if you think the president has power, or it's symbolic, or whatever you think, you can notice it on why when people are upset. We understand why, even if they're reacting in ways we don't or we won't, but we can understand why they're upset. But when we have the people in charge and the media and celebrities and just everyone collectively gaslighting the American people into, like, why this is good for us, or the stock market's great, or the economy's doing good, and people are starving, and inflation and all this stuff is happening, and it is kind of giving rise to these groups of people who are very reactionary, and it's a slap in the face to us as people, as working class individuals, and as a group. So I can understand that frustration, but there is definitely a lot to be done. It's my neighbors who are definitely like NIMBY type people. A lot of them are really nice. Some of them are like NIMBY types, upper middle class types of people. I live in the Bay Area, so there's a lot of those types of people here. They don't notice anything off. They're fine with the inflation, and they're.
Oh no.
Can you see?
You okay?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, you were coming through. You were coming
Okay,
through. Okay.
sorry, there's something going on with my electronics, so I'm like worried. Okay, okay, let me finish that real quick. So basically, yeah, so there are people who aren't noticing that something's off, and if you're not noticing, you're purposely not paying attention. And then you're gonna ask way later, oh, why is this happening? And it's because that's a position of privilege that you're in. It's usually the white upper middle class people in the area I live in that don't notice or don't even care, because it's not happening here in the Bay Area. It's not happening to you, but it is. It's happening underneath. Um, it might not be there might not be like a light flashed on it, but it is happening, and it's affecting us minorities, LGBTQ, like so many people who are just we're always affected by things first, and it is affecting us. So I do, like, I say this a lot, but I really mean it. I know that a lot of people are not comfortable being armed, but I suggest like trying it out, or just watching your friends, or I really suggest that. Even if you don't want to, I think you should learn like we've talked about so many times, certain self-defense. Just use your body, mace, pepper spray, like anything you can, because it's just you can't trust law enforcement, so you're not safe in that aspect, even if you feel safer. Like, it's just not. Maybe I feel that we feel the danger more. It's just really a dangerous time coming, and it's historical, and it sucks to live in historical times, because stuff's gonna happen and it's gonna blow up. So just really, really pay attention to your surroundings if you can, and really get armed. I'm gonna say it. I'm sorry. You need to like practice, or like learn about weapons, or just get armed. Like, you have that, if you have the access to it right now, or if you can ask your friends for help, maybe do that. If you don't have money right now, again, you can ask for friends. You can, I don't know, maybe we should start like donating money to people so they can do that. Like, maybe we'll figure something out. We'll have like a network of people helping each other. But it's imperative that you're ready for this danger, because unfortunately the police and specific groups of people, and anyone who's upholding this status quo and the current system is going to be against you. If you're a minority, if you're any type of minority, they're going to uphold the status quo, which is, the idea of like American democracy and the republic, which goes back to the founding fathers, which is supposed to be secular, but we know it's based off of, like, you know how it was 200 years ago.
Yeah, and helping people get armed is something that I'm a big believer in, and there's a lot of ways to do it, even without dealing with the firearms directly. Like, there's a lot of things you need for a gun that aren't a gun. You need like an optic and a sling. and a flashlight and magazines and ammunition and all of these things that you can help people afford, because we do that's our biggest disadvantage
Mm.
is the money side. In talking about that, I want to bring in this comment real quick. Thank you, Bill, for dropping this comment. It says we need to work together, but the guns we have are replicas. Assault rifles are select fire. They have semi-auto burst and full auto. What we have are assault weapons, which look the same but aren't. If you go look at what happened in war with the advent of full auto weapons, you will see that semi auto can't compete. It doesn't matter if your rounds have the same grain count. Um, so thanks for the comment. I have a lot to say on that. A lot of people will just say that that's wrong, or will just say that that's right. Um, I think it's both wrong and right. So, as a military veteran from the 2010s, which is not fully modern, but it's pretty modern experience, I can say that the US military assault rifles are not fully auto. They have semi auto and burst. And I promise you, you will never find anyone with US military service that disagrees with me here. Burst is never used. So, they're only fully auto. US military assault rifles, M16s and M4s, are only semi-auto. So they are identical to AR-15s. And in fact, some civilian AR-15s are superior in terms of accuracy, reliability, and just build quality. Uh, However, full auto weapons, like you said, do make a big difference in war. Since World War One, the ability to lay down that much suppressing fire, it's a big deal, because if you're being shot at with 600 bullets in 1 minute, you can't move, you can't shoot back. It's a big deal. Machine guns are a big deal, but that doesn't have to do with assault rifles necessarily. Assault rifles have never been able to do a suppressing fire role. I think a long time ago, people thought one day they could. They can't. Assault rifles have never replaced machine guns. Machine guns are a separate thing.
Mhm.
Um, so when you talk about the firepower that different groups have, like for instance, no police departments have machine guns. Um, most people don't have machine guns, although you can buy a machine gun. So the big barrier to getting armed in the United States is not the law, it's money. Machine guns are extremely expensive. They start at over $10,000. You can also purchase military grade night vision and thermal vision, military grade drones. You can buy all this stuff. You just need a ton of money.
Yeah.
Um, So what AR platforms I think give people is it's a lot of firepower. It's as much firepower as a police department. It's as much firepower as like a right-wing Nazi militia. They're probably only going to have uh, you know, something as powerful as an AR style weapon. But the other thing to keep in mind is that as things get worse, one of, if not the main risk for violence is going to be right wing paramilitaries, far right groups. One of the instructive examples from history that I look at um, is the Lumbee. It's Lumbee. It's a indigenous tribe from Georgia, I believe, and they survived so many different calamities, and then uh, after World War II, I think in the 50s, the KKK decided to drive them out of Georgia, that they're going to cleanse this area of non-white people. So they're going to get rid of the Lumbee tribe. However, the Lumbee tribe had a bunch of World War II veterans, and they had semi-automatic rifles. So when the KKK held their big rally, they did a cross burning. They had speakers. They said, "We're going to drive the Lumbee out of our county." Um, the Lumbee showed up at the rally, and they ended up having a gun battle, and the Lumbee won. They drove the KKK out of that county, and they never came back. Um, and sorry about this light situation.
Okay.
Um, as we as we see more Christian fascist violence, like what happened with the Atlanta shooting, um, you're going to see more cases of right wing individuals targeting marginalized groups. Um, so essentially, right wing civilians targeting marginalized groups, whether that be Asian spa workers or black neighborhoods or gay neighborhoods. That's going to be one of the main threats to the lives of marginalized people. And if you have an AR-15, you're pretty much as well armed as any right wing mass shooter in this country. Um, so I think it is significant what kind of arms we can access and what kind of arms we can access cheaply. Because, like I said, a machine gun is like $10,000. An AR-15 is like $400, $500, $600. Um, you can get uh, what is that? Like 20 of them for for the price of a machine gun. So yeah, I mean, I think the significance of that firepower is there.
Yeah, there's so many, like, just I think, what is it, more than 400 million? I think there's 300, almost, yeah, 400 million guns like owned.
Hmm.
I think, but there's obviously more that aren't owned in just our country, And I think that, of course, money is a one of the biggest barrier, if not, of course, being a felon, all these other problems. There are lots of barriers, but yeah, they're like just in our country, like us compared to, like, I don't know, like if most of the country rallied together and came up together in arms against like a specific force, then that's a lot of firepower. It is, and there's also different tactics, like there's like guerrilla tactics, there's just so many different things you can do. I'm not gonna say, I'm not an expert on it, of course, but I know that I read there are like almost a half a billion, guns owned in the country, and that's a lot of firepower. Of course, a lot of those people are, either right wing or far right or libertarian, and it just depends. Not every single one of them are going to be, a Christian fascist, like obviously, but there is a lot there. And yeah, like you said, helping your friends get armed or helping people get armed, and I agree. As far as like the weapons that you just said, I didn't know actually a lot of that, so thanks for telling me that.
Yeah, and like you said, there's tons of guns already out there. So I think getting people armed is very important, but getting them organized is the most important thing.
Mhm.
And in terms of what we can do, actually, like the counter protest that we held at UNT, which was student led, student driven, um, that's an important kind of battleground in this conflict for the laws of the country, for the society, with Christian fascism, because organizing those students to stand up to this dangerous and hateful ideology, um, that's important to make sure that those voices are pushed back upon, because what happens when that resistance goes away is that just becomes the dominant messaging without challenge.
Mhm.
And we've seen that before in US history, to where a hateful, a white supremacist, a Christian fascist um, messaging just becomes dominant. And at that point, you lose a lot of normal people, right? If you're hearing the same things from your schools, from your politicians, from your government, from all of these different corners of the society, it becomes very normalized. It becomes the way things are. Um,
Mhm.
Anti-gay laws and Jim Crow laws, all of these things, uh, when they become normalized, they become much harder to fight against. So protesting, organizing people into protesting groups, as well as mutual aid groups and community defense groups, I think that's the most important thing that we can do. is to organize, to get into groups, and to multiply our power that way.
Yeah, I think also what you said too, like, this what the status quo is, and I think that people don't even realize it, but like that's all they want to keep is the status quo, especially in America. Any type of like resistor, like that's what they want. They want the status quo, but like I don't think they even realize it. So it's like one of the first steps I think in like even maybe even before organizing is normalizing this dissent, this just idea of like, okay, this, do we want to keep this? Like, no, there's some things of course that I think we should keep, some things that I even think we could improve on, like women's rights, reproductive rights, children's rights, like all these things we can improve on, LGBTQ rights, minorities right, all these things. But there is like the first step, I feel like it's like a mental thing, because if you don't even know what's going on, I mean, as like a kid, like as a teenager, I wasn't politically aware, um, until like mid high school, and then it's like, okay, you're kind of starting to understand things around you, but you're not like, and like, sorry, one second, but you're starting to understand things surrounding you. Uh, and you're either thinking, like when I was younger, I was like, okay, I don't like that, but I didn't have enough of that critical thinking, I guess, to really go past that and say, okay, I don't like that, but what can we do about that? And how to kind of have these thoughts of dissent. And it's the same thing with like any type of, it starts like at home and in your head, like, okay, I don't know, for kids, oh, I don't like that I have a bedtime, that dumb thing that was on Twitter, but like like I feel like it does make sense. Like you have to have that thought process of like, okay, we have to normalize this dissent first, and then when notice that you are having opinions that are not the same as the status quo, you can meet other people who start thinking that way, and it builds from there. And I think one of the biggest problems is like, sorry to jump from one tangent to another, but one of the most important things is like nobody wants that in like some of like the liberal rad lib group, like they want Bernie to be president still, and they want um this like type of like democratic socialist idea they have in their heads that it's not really going to happen, so we kind of need to build towards that dissent.
Yeah, I think that's very important. I think that's one of the things that scared the establishment about 2020 is normalizing dissent. Right? Theoretically, we have this right to protest. We could be protesting all the time, and if you look like a country like France, it is much more normalized to be in the streets like all the time.
Yeah.
Did someone did the government do something wrong? Did a company do something wrong? Well, we're going to be in the streets. And I think that's one of the coolest things about the French
Hmm.
people. But yeah, it needs to be normalized to um, be organized, to express dissent. Um, I think mutual aid networks play a big role in that. I'm encouraging groups in my area to branch out more in terms of like what we can offer the community, like how we can see more like material um, benefits.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think people are, at least the normal people, the regular working class people, are moving away from that kind of Bernie idealism, um, which I think is good because I think it's impractical from a number of angles.
Hmm.
If we had a system that was just based on popular support, it wouldn't be difficult. But that is not our system. Particularly the Democratic Party. They have a super delegate system, right? So the insiders get to choose the candidates. You don't have more say than them as a regular person. Um, and even if Bernie were to be elected, uh, there's a lot of history that I think Americans are intentionally prevented from learning about, at least through school and through the history documentaries on PBS that I watched as a kid. Um, that shows uh, the right wing does not have a track record of accepting democratic change. Um, many countries, a socialist was elected, and then they just killed him. You know, it's it's not the way you're taught in school. To where if you win the election, you get to make the laws. You've won the game. Now you're in control. No, the people who are in control don't want you to take that control away from them.
Mhm.
So if you somehow beat them at their rigged game, they're just gonna kill you. Um, it's very Squid Games esque.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but I think we'll see more protests soon, as well as we've been seeing very successful labor action, and that's been very encouraging. A lot of new unions, a lot of unions yet but led by pretty radical young people, who are excited to do good things.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
protesting and organizing.
Can we talk about that real quick? Sorry. Like Chris Smalls, I think his name was, from the Amazon labor union.
Hmm.
Yeah, so that this is like really good. I mean, I think they have another vote coming up. I'm not sure if it was yet, but it does feel like it's a win for like a labor the labor movement, and it's great. And I want to really stress that this was done by workers and people of all different groups. Like, I'm sure not everyone working in that specific warehouse was like a bar, like there are different people, but they worked together and they were able to get that done. And I know that there's more work to be done. It's not completely done yet, but they did it without these politicians. I want to shout out to Chris Smalls because that's awesome that he did that, and he did say, Bernie and AOC kind of abandoned them and came last minute, and it kind of like it annoys me personally because it's like, oh, you're just here to kind of claim credit for it, but you didn't really help. But that's not important. What's important is these people are doing that. We're doing it ourselves as workers, and we don't actually need our status quo politicians. Like, we don't. I mean, it would help, obviously, but we're like building real political power and labor power by ourselves together with people who we might not always agree on. Of course, it's not like a complete fundamental difference like a far right Christian fascist, but like there are, of course, not everyone is going to agree on the same thing in that warehouse, or the workers. I'm sure they have different opinions, but we were able to make those concessions, I guess. And I'm by me, I mean like workers. I don't work for Amazon, but like I do support the union. I support like workers, seizing the means of productions, obviously. So I think that's a good win for us, and hopefully gets some more momentum building for us as workers to just take what's ours back. And of course it's going to take time and it's not going to be this easy, but I want to shout out Chris Smalls for that because that's an awesome win, and I hope going forward it's like just more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think it highlighted exactly what you talked about. That it wasn't Bernie, it wasn't AOC, it wasn't the AFL-CIO. It wasn't these big money unions. It wasn't these big money politicians. It was regular workers on the ground. Several of whom were fired. Um, that got it done. And it's an important thing, I think, for us leftists to remember that we can win, and we do win. Um, it is just a matter of organizing our power. Um, I think it's easy to lose hope sometimes.
Mhm.
To think, oh, we don't have any power. We can't oppose these forces that are trying to crush us, but we can. It is just a matter of organizing that. We have uh, we have both the right and the ability to decide for ourselves what things happen in our world. to have power over our workplace, over our communities.
Mhm.
We are kind of beaten into submission that these rich people with the capital, they get to decide what buildings exist, what
Mhm.
parks exist, what jobs exist. Um, but and even who lives and who dies. But when we organize together and we assemble that power, um, uh, we can control those decisions. And I think, Melissa Lucio in my state, that was a big example of that. Uh, that happened because tens of thousands of people got together, and I saw it. There were like 50 people in a small working class apartment writing letters like, "Do not kill this woman."
Mhm.
Um, and we made that happen. In New York City, Chris Smalls got together with other working class people, and they were told, you know, you can't do this. You have no say over your job, and you're even fired. You don't have a job. And they got together and they said, no, we control, you know, the decisions that affect our lives. And so I think those small victories are really important. I think more of those are coming, and I'm excited to see more of that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I agree with everything you said. It beautifully said as well. Oh, and one more thing. Midterms coming up. I'm sure people recognize now what's like a politician politicking. Like they want to get your vote. And I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to do or how to, you're an individual human being. You make your own choices. But um, I think we should be wary of that. Like again, with them showing up, I think was it yesterday or the other day they showed up. Bernie and AOC showed up to the Amazon. I don't remember exactly what it was. Sorry, but they were there, and there was a picture of them there. And this is like again, it's to keep the status quo. It's to vanquish dissent and have this appearance that they're helping or doing things. And like Bubble said, like I said, we excuse me, we are, we're doing the work and we're having some wins, and just remember that. And remember, I mean, some people still support those politicians. I don't. I'm vocal about it. I really don't. And I just, think about it more that of course, when it's coming, midterms are coming up, they're going to want your vote. They are. So just be wary of that and pay attention. We like know that the Democrats have always done that. They kind of come around and either take credit or prop something up only to abandon it later after they get your vote. So just be aware and yeah, and hopefully more wins.
Yeah, I think people have woken up a lot to that, like you said. Um, I hope that people spend less money and time and effort on this election cycle
Mhm.
because no matter what the outcome is, um, those politicians won't help you. They are there at the end of the day for those corporate interests, for those moneyed interests. They're there to represent Amazon. They're not there to represent you. Um, and people, they pour out their life into elections. It's really sad for me to see. Um, they'll spend so much time door knocking and volunteering and all of this time and money, millions of dollars and hundreds of hours of their lives, and they're not building anything lasting for their communities.
Mhm.
So, um, maybe we can even make a flyer or something to put that to people like, hey, please take all the time and the money that you want to put into these elections and put it into a permanent an organization that will help your community long after this election cycle. Um, hopefully even long after your lifetime, because that's what we really need to do to make a difference is uh, to organize, by us, for us, and to not play into this election politics, um, for these people that we all showed up for.
Mhm.
More people voted than ever in 2020, and what did we get out of it? We got nothing.
Mhm.
Everything is worse now. It, like, um, my life and everyone's life that I know, except for, some people, you get job promotions and things like that. But in many, many ways, our lives are materially worse. We have fewer rights. We are more in danger. Um, yeah. I, for me personally, it's never again. I did not feel happy voting for Joe Biden. I'm not going to vote for um, anyone like that again. They're not gonna they're not gonna trick me again because honestly, like, I don't feel like it was worth it at all. Um, I'm
Mhm.
happy to protest and organize every day of my life, and to a large extent, I do. It's very
Yeah.
tiring, but uh, yeah, enough of these Democrats.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And yeah, honestly, like Bubbles always out there doing something, and it's I feel like you don't feel bad, like, if you did vote, like, you make up for it in the work you do. I feel like personally, like, because 'cause I'm the same way. Like, I mean, I haven't voted. I mean, I did vote, I think, like, a third party because I was just like, I couldn't vote, I just couldn't because but that doesn't mean, like, it's a person's fault. Like, we were gaslit. Like, we're always
Yeah.
gaslit.
No,
Yeah,
of course. That's one of the
yeah,
main things they get you with is it's like, well, everything bad is your fault because you voted. And it's like,
yeah,
no, this is a big system that's rigged against the people. It doesn't at the end of the day matter very much who you voted for or whether you even voted. There are
mhm,
people in back rooms who are making these decisions with no regard for you. Like, don't put it on the school teacher in Ohio who, you know, put a vote in a box. That has nothing to do
yeah.
with how our system is actually run.
Yeah, exactly. It's all we're just numbers on the productivity scale. That's all we are to them, money, profit, and if we don't increase their profits, then we don't matter. We don't even have a name when we increase their profits. So yeah, we get it. It's of course, don't blame yourselves. Just, I feel like as long as more people are waking up and they're kind of, going outside of the networks that were told to like, oh, go vote and like gaslit all the time, like, oh, you can make a change, this is the most important election ever, and it's like, are you like, you say that every 2 years, like, like, we know what you're doing now, and I'm glad people are waking up. I'm worried for people who are, reactionary, of course, but there's always, that's just history. It's
Yes.
always like that, I feel like, and hopefully this time we can counteract that and have a more, whatever, if we ever get the world we want, hopefully, I think we're making steps to get there, and that's the most important thing, is that we are doing things differently, and or not differently because there have been people before us who've done it, but we're reigniting that spark again, I think.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think people are largely moving in the right direction. It is wild to me the people that still hold on to electoralism. Because there's just, I mean, you're just bad at history. There's so many examples you can look to, even in the past year. Um, you know, so much time and effort and people pouring out their lives. They got a socialist elected to be the mayor of Buffalo, a big city. And of course, they just changed the rules, right?
Yep.
They just eliminated the position of mayor. They're they're just going to change the rules on you.
Yeah.
Stop counting on voting. I don't if people want to vote, like, that's a few hours out of your life, fine, go vote. But please don't put any faith in it. Don't volunteer, do not donate.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed. Waste of your time. I mean, I don't know. You might find it enjoyable or like you're doing something good, but I think like I donated money to Bernie in like 2016, I think it was. Yeah. And I remember like I felt so mad about it, like 4 years, like 2020, when he just
Yeah.
like, he just gave the election to Biden, and I was like, bro, I gave you money, like, and then I was like, that was the only time I donated money to a politician, and the last, and I was like, and obviously it was like 4 years later that, and I was like excited again, but I was like, I'm not gonna donate any money because they, exactly like Sunshine says, they fooled and bamboozled us all. Our votes don't matter, and they put in who they want, and that's exactly what it is. And it took me, I feel like it took me fast to realize it, because like it's just like I wasn't really in the politics world, like, younger, and then as I got older, you're like, oh, that's weird. But some people do have faith in it because they want the American dream, and a lot of these people are not anti-capitalist. That's probably why, because they want, like, they just want it to be like, middle class, like baby boom type of how it was after FDR, was in office. And we did have more social protections, but it was because of, they wanted to stop socialist and communist revolutions. So I
Yeah.
think that's what
Well,
people romanticize.
yeah, I mean, I think, for a lot of the establishment, they don't even really have any values. They'll just whatever benefits them. And they can change the rules, so why would they not change the rules? Anytime they don't like it, they'll just change the rules.
Yeah.
Um, and at this point, in our lifetimes, we've seen them change the rules so many times. Uh, we just have to realize what's going on. We have to do something different. And I think you and I both think that strong, organized communities that are armed.
Hmm.
Um, but we're running out of time here.
Yeah.
You know, I think this was a little bit less structured than some of our other episodes, but at the same time, I think it's one of our best. So thank you as always, El Diablo. Um, y'all can find me at Bubble Break BS on Twitter. I have an airsoft group that we do self defense things at a airsoftist, anarcho airsoftist. And also follow me on Instagram at anarcho airsoftist.
Yeah, thank you. As always, I agree. I think this was a very informative and good episode. I appreciate Bubble always being here, and all you guys, or sorry, you people who are watching. Um, I appreciate it a lot, and all the comments as well. You can follow me on Twitter as well. It's at Lickstiel, Lickstiel. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Good night.